Oh, hello. In today's video, we're going to talk about what you need to consider if you want to keep using Octarius or any of the Season 1 kill zones from the previous edition in the new edition of Kill Team. So, Killzone Octarius, right, we all love it. I get kind of misty-eyed thinking about my Octarius set getting retired, okay? It probably is the Games Workshop terrain set that I've gotten the most use out of, ever, right? And it was designed for Kill Team 2021, and it really became the gold standard for both casual and competitive gaming in Kill Team. It's kind of became the default for play. It's still what me and Zimbab play on. You know, we played last week on Octarius. Unless Hivestorm shows up early, we're going to be playing our last game of Kill Team 21 on Tuesday on Octarius, right? And there are many painted sets of Octarius out there in the wild, and a lot of people are reluctant to stop using them because they've obviously invested, even though they've got a lot of hobby miles out of them, they've still invested a lot of time into painting them, and they're familiar with them, and they like them, and it kind of sucks to feel like you have to just kind of put something to one side. Especially as well, tournament organisers, right? TOs have said to me personally, like, well, we'd love to go all Volcus, right? But we're not going to have that much Volcus in our community. We're going to have to use the terrain for our stock. Especially if you're, you know, everyone has different setups. So, like, the Not Kill Team guys, they get people to bring their terrain from home and they use their own personal terrain. In other places I've spoken to, people have a shop, and the shop's got a supply of terrain that's actually come out of its own budget. I think if you're a venue and the venue has terrain, and then you're coming along as the Kill Team kind of guy and saying, hey, we need to buy all new terrain, your shop guy is going to look at you with a raised eyebrow, right? Because he's already invested in all this other terrain. So I understand those scenarios. I would suggest maybe moving to the model where you're sourcing your terrain from in the community. Seems to work really well for the Knots guys. I think it's a really good idea, but maybe that's just me. So why do I think this? So I have been called some names in the past, usually all by Major Tom. A shill, a whale, and a shoppy, which, all after the same thing. Basically, I am too quick to suckle from the teat of the Games Workshop marketing spiel and to go along with the things that they want us to do, right? So I have said before, and I still kind of think, we should all move with the times, we should play the game our Games Workshop intends us to play, and stop clinging on to our old stuff, and just, personally, I'm going to donate my Octarius to my school club, right, so the kids can enjoy it. Probably break it, but they can enjoy playing on some painted terrain for once in their lives. I think that's really valuable. I understand. I don't need the lecture from people. I understand that for financial and practical reasons, like I outlined on the previous slide, it's not actually a viable option for everyone to just get the new stuff and paint it up and use that. Okay, and that is okay. Right, I have my preferences, but they are preferences. This video isn't actually about my preferences, okay? This video isn't about how I think everyone should buy and use Volcus. I'll own my biases. I think everyone should buy and use Volcus, or Beat to Death or Into the Dark, the 3 officially supported kill zones for the current edition. But this video, honestly, seriously, is about the practical problems that I think you're going to encounter, and I fear that I'm going to encounter at events by people who want to keep using the older terrain for one reason or another, okay? Traversable. So Traversable, for those of you who are new to the channel and have come in since Hivestorm launched, right? Traversable was a rule in the previous edition of Kill Team 2021. And I've reproduced it down here, okay? So Traversable, if a piece of terrain had that tag Traversable, it meant that the terrain could be traversed. So Traverse. A traverse is when an operative must clear a small obstacle in their way, such as a barricade or a pipe. During an operative's move, it can ascend and descend terrain with the traversable trait at a cost of circle, which is what we used to call 2 inches, so at a cost of 2 inches. But cannot finish a move on top of it. If this is not possible, it cannot traverse it. It must move around it instead. A traverse is not a climb. The operative simply vaults over the obstacle in their way as it moves horizontally across the kill zone. Now, with Traversable being gone, we got 3 ramshackle barricades within Octarius, and 2 of them are here, okay, because they have a height of more than 2 inches. So it's going to cost you 4 inches to climb these ramshackle barricades. That's going to lead to a really negative play experience. And maybe you can make it work if you know that's the rule and you set up your maps really mindfully and go, hey, these are going to be hecking great speed bumps. They're going to cost 4 inches to move through. So if you're a 5-inch move team, you just have to go round, because you're not getting over it and placing yourself down on the other side. It's not happening. You can't move through that with just an inch. If you're a Space Marine captain on a 40mm base, again, you're just going to have to go round, because you've got 2 inches, but you're going to lose some movement. You're going to lose some distance to the actual thickness of the piece. I'm not convinced you're going to place that 40mm base down on the other side. Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. Maybe you will. Probably not, though. Yeah. I think if you're going to use Octarius, one of the first things you need to do is you need to take traversable. You need to maybe rewrite the verbiage, get rid of that circle, get that shape, get that out of here, replace that with 2 inches, rewrite that rule, and then put that into your tournament pack, put that into your house rules, and just say, look, we're playing Octarius. This terrain, just like the Volcus terrain, has unique traits that are only found in the city fight section in the Killzone Volcus. Octarius is going to need some of those unique traits, and this is one of them. You're going to need to bring back traversable pretty much just for these 2 terrain features. Strong advocate of that. Scramble. So you need to bring back Scramble over and Charge from the old edition as well. So for those of you that are unaware, Octarius has these pieces of terrain called scrap piles, and they're really quite big, bulky things. I know on this picture there's nothing for scale, so you might think it looks quite similar to the little piles of scattered terrain in Hivestorm. It's not. It's massive. Okay, so they put in rules here to allow you to scramble over, so to move over and to charge over the terrain for 1 action point. Now, those rules are a little bit janky and do sometimes result in you getting quite long charges, right? But I do think they need to be there, okay? And so I will put them back in as Killzone specific house rules. Now, I did notice that Can You Roll a Crit? John has just done a really good job of rewording the rules for Scramble, because he's just come out with an Octarius community map pack, right? Now, a lot of people are going to think this video is a reply to his video. It sort of de facto is. It was in my head as a thing I wanted to put out there before I saw John's video. Obviously, I can't prove that, but it was in my head. But in the world we're living in, yeah, I guess it kind of does form a reply to that. Go and watch John's Octarius video. He does do this. He doesn't do the traversable thing, though, which is bizarre. I really want to know, Crit, if you're watching, like, was that a conscious decision? That you don't think that or did you not realise that those ramshackle walls are taller than 2 inches? I'm interested. I think we need a single agreed, whether it's Can You Roll a Crit version or somebody else does one, but we need a single agreed version of the wording of these rules that is out there in the public domain. Because what I don't want to have happen, right, this would really suck if people are running events and they're using terrain and it's like, oh, it's Octarius, it works like this, you know how Octarius works. That, honestly, that's fine for people who've been playing this for the last 3 years, right? So most people who are doing this channel are thinking, Phil, what are you making a big deal out of? Just keep playing it the same way, the terrain, fine. But we need to put those rules somewhere and codify them so that when new players are coming in, we can point to them and say, look, this is how this is going to work. This is the rules for the events that are using this pack or this way of running things. This is how we're going to do it, right? And that needs to be in place before the first wave of events come along that want to use these alternative bits of terrain, because the rules aren't in the pack. And you're going to end up in this position where if you run a kill team event and you don't say anything and you put people down in front of a table with Octarius terrain on, if they're like me, they've been playing for like 3 years, they're probably just going to say to each other like, oh, are we just going to have Scramble and Charge Over be a thing for this game? And they're like, yeah, we can't have traversable, yeah. And then they'll be playing a version of the game, and then you might have 2 new players on another table playing the game totally differently on the same map, right? And what happens in the worst case scenario is you've got one like old Longbeard player and one new player, and both making assumptions, and those assumptions don't align, and it causes a problem halfway down turning point 1, right? So we need to really get on this and decide what are we doing, how are we doing it, write it down, put it out there and say this is the thing. Okay, I'm not good enough at the game, and I'm not tactically minded enough, really, to tell you what you should do to solve the problems. I really just want to go through and flag out the various problems as they exist, right? There's some also doors. So, I've been really naughty. I've taken a screenshot from the leaks, just a tiny one. Okay, don't tell Games Workshop. In Killzone Volcus, right? Now these rules here only apply to Killzone Volcus rules as written, because they're in the City Fight section. So Killzone Volcus has the following additional rules, and one of these rules is Door Fight. Now I've talked about Door Fight before, right? So for 1 AP, you can, in a very similar way to the way you do it Into the Dark, you can do a fight. You can basically do a hatchway fight, right? The rules there if you want to read it. Now, again, I watched Can You Roll a Crit video, and he, I think, casually mentioned, oh yeah, and of course you can door fight now, because I think in his mind, this applies to all doors. Now, I agree, it should apply to all doors. It's not the rule. The rule is that it's written in there in the section for Killzone Volcus. It's not written in the rules for Access Point. So if you want it to apply to all of your doors on Octarius and on Chalnath, right, and on Moroch, okay, you're going to have to put it in your pack that, yep, the doors are using the door fight rule from the city fight rules in the Kill Team Core manual. Like, write that down. Make it super clear for people so that they don't, because at the moment this is just a rule for Volcus. Make it a rule for all of the doors. Just like we had to retrospectively put the door rules into Octarius when Chalnath came out, remember that? Right? We need to actually state, we're using this rule from here. Explain it. Put it in there. Okay? What about Chalnath? Talk about Chalnath a bit. So, if you want to keep using Chalnath, in the same way that you wanted to keep using Octarius, now, Chalnath had the scalable trait, right? So, scalable. Each time an operative climbs this terrain feature, the final incremental distance of less than 2 inches is ignored, instead being rounded up to 2 inches. So what this means is an operative looking to climb a Chalnath ruin building's punishing vantage point via the shortest possible route will travel vertically 2 instead of 3, right? So this is the first of many versions of a rule that say, look, we know this piece of plastic isn't 2 inches tall, but treat it for gameplay purposes for climbing up it as if it's 2 inches tall. You've also got the punishing vantage point rule. I don't suggest you carry forward the punishing vantage point rule. I suggest we forget the punishing vantage point rule. Vantage points now have, in the current edition, well, the new edition of the game as I'm recording this, but I want this to be useful content in the future, the Hivestorm edition of the game, vantage points already have a load of extra rules, and there are rules for vantage points that are on high levels, so we don't need to grandfather across punishing vantage point, let that die, but we do need to grandfather through scalable. Now what you could do, if you want to be really neat and tidy, instead of bringing back traversable, just bring back scalable and then give it to the Octarius ramshackle barricades, right? So that they have the exact same rule of count the final incremental distance of less than 2 as ignored. So it'll just be 2 to climb up them, and then in exactly the same way you'll just climb up and then jump off or fall off or whatever it is that you do. Yeah, so it's just going to be a 2-inch tax rather than a 4-inch tax. Nachmund. Thinking about Nachmund is exhausting, and we're going to go down a little bit rabbit hole now, unfortunately. Okay, there's a bunch of things to consider in Nachmund that just don't make sense anymore. The first thing is the exhaust vent. So the exhaust vent's here. The exhaust vent projects an area of smoke. The area of smoke that it projects was aligned with how smoke grenades worked in the previous edition of the game, and not with how smoke grenades work in the current edition of the game, the Hivestorm edition, which is a totally different thing, right? So in the olden days, areas of smoke, if you drew a cover line through it, it impeded visibility, right? Whereas now, in the Hivestorm edition of the game, areas of smoke only benefit you when you're physically inside them. They don't at all have any impact on people trying to shoot through them. Okay? So how do you want to work this, and how big an area of smoke do you want to be? Would you go down to 1 inch from the physical terrain piece? Because that's more in line with what we're sort of doing now, it feels like. But the fact that this doesn't block off a firing lane, it just provides shelter for someone standing in it, is going to radically change how you build maps for Nachmund that use these pieces. I don't know if you're going to be able to build a one-box map for Nachmund that makes sense without having these blocking visibility, but then having 2 different kinds of smoke is kind of troublesome, or at least I think so. Like, I don't really like having a smoke grenade that works one way and then a smoke terrain piece that works another way. It's weird. I don't have solutions, only problems. Okay, but again, it's something else that the TOs that want to keep using Nachmund and people that want to use Nachmund on the kitchen table, people are going to have to figure this one out. The Ferrotonic Furnace. The Ferrotonic Furnace has ladders, and the ladders are scalable. Do we want to keep them being scalable, so they're 2 inches to climb, or do we want them to work like the ladder equipment piece, so they become 1 inch to climb? Again, it's going to change things for your map design if it's 1 inch, but I kind of want them to be 1 inch to climb, because it's weird to have all these ladders are 2 inches to climb, and these other ladders in the same game, they're 1 inch to climb. Like, I don't want that. It's weird, it makes my brain hurt, okay? It spoils my enjoyment of the game. So I think we need to say, oh, these ladders, they work like the ladder equipment, but they're in fixed positions. And then design maps appropriately. If you still can design a competitive map appropriately with all the changes that we're going to have to make to Nachmund, I don't know. The smog stack. So the smog stack is probably the worst piece of terrain in Kill Team, because I am a clumsy guy and I'm always knocking over the smog stack. Because it's a really tall little noodle with a really thin footprint. Okay, the smog stack releases smog. The smog subtracts 1 from what used to be called the defense characteristic. We don't have a defense characteristic anymore. We could, like, write a rule, I guess, that was like, you get to roll 1 less defense dice when in range of the smog stack. Events that were using the Turning Point Tactics map pack already omitted this rule and just said this is a smog stack, it has heavy, and it didn't do the smog thing, because I guess Ryan decided that smog was dumb anyway. So I'm not used to playing with smog as a thing. So maybe just put them in the bin. Like, if you want to have them, and if you're watching this somewhere and you play kitchen table games in a kitchen in the Netherlands and you don't know what a Turning Point Tactics is, but for some reason my channel is like the one source you have of all the latest Kill Team news, and maybe your favourite terrain set is Nachmund and it's all finely painted up and you've got little Netherlands flags stuck on it and everything. Hypothetical Dutch guy that loves Nachmund, right? You're going to have to work out with you and your buddies, what are we doing with this? Because this rule doesn't do anything currently, because there's no defense stat. So, yeah, another problem without a solution, and the only solution I have is just don't have smog. So Moroch, let's move on to Moroch. So we've got the landing pad. We love the landing pad. Cool piece of terrain. Definitely doesn't dominate every single game. It has the low trait, which is basically another version of treat the thing as 2 inches tall, even though we didn't make it 2 inches tall because we didn't design it for Kill Team. And yet we desperately want all terrain to basically be 2 inches tall. But this time it applies to dropping off it as well, so it's 2 inches to go up, and it's also 2 inches to fall off. Cool. Just grandfather that across, that's fine. It has stairs that you can walk up, and the stairs basically say you ignore the vertical distance because you just climb the stairs without having to pay anything. Right, again, fine. Just grandfather that one across, no worries. This thing, the Vox antenna, has a ladder, so whatever we decided we were doing with Nachmund ladders on the furnace, we should probably just have the same thing apply to this ladder. Should it be 2 inches to climb? Should it be 1 inch to climb? Like, I think it should be 1 inch to climb just because I want things to have consistency across the game. But maybe it's better if it's 2 inches for like a tactical reason. I don't know. But then, if you kept the ladder on the side as 2 inches and the equipment ladder was 1 inch, is someone just going to deploy an equipment point ladder like next to the existing ladder? That's dumb. That's really dumb. It also had a rule called confined. While an operative is on this terrain feature's vantage point, no other operatives can finish a move or be set up on the vantage point. Can you actually fit? I haven't. I could have got mine out and tried it for the video, couldn't I? But I didn't because I'm a very lazy creator. Can you actually fit two 25mm bases on top of this? Has the rule ever had a point? Like, if it does have a purpose, it needs probably to be grandfathered in as well, like, as a thing. So if you don't want two 25mm guys having a fist fight on top of an antenna, although, like, why not? I don't know. Yes, the stockades. So the stockades are amazing pieces of terrain. They have yet another version of a rule that says, look, secretly they're 2 inches, even though they're not, right? So an operative climbing over this terrain feature needs to travel. Oh no, it's 2 circle. But I'm full of excrement, right? They have a rule that makes them more difficult to climb over, right? So they have a rule that makes them 4 inches to climb over. So it's 2 circle up and down the stockade, even though they're not. Yeah, so that doesn't need to be a rule because that's just how tall they are. They're like a little bit over 2 inches tall. I'm not really sure why that's a rule, but yes, it costs 4 to go across them, which sucks. And I hate Moroch. But hey, it always has been the rule. Do you want the Octarius barricades to feel as sucktastic as the Moroch barricades? Because that's what you're going to do if you don't bring back traversable. Anyway, when determining line of sight, if the active operative and or the intended target is higher than the highest point of this terrain feature, it's not treated as obscuring. Measurements determined from the operative's bases. I don't think I've ever remembered this rule. In 3 years, I don't think I ever remembered this rule and therefore played it. Apparently, it's a thing, right? So if you're up on the comms tower, right, you can ignore the stockades for the purposes of obscuring. Like, fine, okay, cool. And then there's a defendable rule, which is like really sad because it's very long. Each time an operative fights in combat, if it's not the active operative but it's defending this terrain feature, it's always the attacker, regardless of any rules the enemy operative has. For an operative to be defending this terrain feature, the following must be true. It has an engage order. The active operative performed a charge action during this activation. The active operative's controlling player cannot draw any cover lines to target operative without them crossing this terrain feature. Good grief. Right. That is basically, that rule has survived in the game, in the Hivestorm version of the game, as the Garrison Stronghold rule, right? So if you're inside a stronghold on Killzone Volcus, there's the rule, when an operative wholly within a stronghold terrain feature is retaliating against an operative that isn't, the defender resolves first, and this takes precedence over the normal fight resolution order, which is the same rule, with a lot less words, because the new version of Kill Team is amazing, and here's an example of why. So, if you want to give the Moroch stockades the Garrison Stronghold rule from the City Fight pages in the Hivestorm manual, then in the core rules, sorry, then go for it, right? It's right there for you. It's basically the same rule, but tidied up. I will say the defendable rule, for people that go to CPT tournaments, we were already ignoring the defendable rule. I'm not sure why. I don't know if Ryan ever did a video explaining like why certain rules aren't in his map pack, but they're not. So, I mean, that's one that usually has to get asked at the start of every... I remember one day I will review the big TPT tournament that I went to that Ryan ran, but like obviously it keeps getting pushed back on the schedule because this video is so much easier to make. But like, one of the questions that was asked right at the start of the event to the TOs was like, what are we doing with the Moroch stockades? Because some people play with the defendable rule and some people don't. So, it's another question for you to answer if you are running an event and you're using this old legacy terrain stuff, right? Final thoughts. I want to hear what you think down below. How are you going to run all this terrain if you're going to run it? Particularly if you're a TO. I'm not just talking about the big TOs, right? People I've name checked in the video. But if maybe you run a little event like somewhere with 6 players in your shop and the shop's got these terrain, you really haven't got the option. Like, how are you going to run it? What's your house rule going to be? It would be great if we're going to have Octarius hanging around in the scene. It would be great if we all ran it the same way, right? Making this video has really shown me that I think you can quite easily play Octarius or Chalnath with just a little bit of discussion and tweaking in your playgroup. Moroch and particularly Nachmund, like, are painful. and thinking about them makes my teeth hurt, right? If that makes sense to you, right? So yeah, let me know if you plan on persevering with Moroch and Nachmund especially, because that's... How are you going to make smoke grenades work? Like, I'm flabbergasted. If you enjoyed the video and learned something from the video, like if you were not aware of all of these incongruities and now you've got something to put in place to think about with your little group before your next game or event, then I've provided a service to you, so consider liking the video, subscribing, and sharing it to everybody else so I can explain to them the various problems with using the old terrain that aren't just me saying, no, get the new terrain because I love Games Workshop so much. Because honestly, if that's the vibe that the video has, I've done it wrong. I do think that. I do love Games Workshop that much. Please send me free stuff, Games Workshop, but that's not the point of the video. Okay, I want to say a massive thank you to all the people who are subscribed already. Like, we're nearly at 2,000 subscribers. That's amazing. That's like a big number, right? Wow. I want to say a massive thank you to all my members, the people that pay a small financial amount every single month, to support me doing this for them, which is flabbergasting, amazing. And when it comes around to April, I'm going to have to fill in some tax office forms, like, because I've made too much money for it to be just a hobby. Amazing. So thank you all so very much. I really appreciate all your support. I always will. And until next time, I'll probably put another video out tomorrow. Who knows, right? And I'll see you then. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Goodbye.